Hi, guys. Happy Tuesday, which is when I normally record my lectures for you guys, except normally I record my lectures in the morning, but I didn't get to do that this morning. So I am going to record this lecture for you, and I've had 3 classes in a row, and now I'm going to do this one. So I may not be my normal peppy self, but I'm going to try to engage with you guys and go over this next chapter. I hope I have a guest lecturer that is going to talk about resume writing and some just initial career seeking opportunities. I have asked a woman that owns her own recruiting firm to do that for me. I just don't know that if she's going to or if she's not. I'm hopeful that she will. She's an expert in her field, and I thought it would be really beneficial for you guys to hear from her what she sees, especially people coming out of college that are just getting their bachelor's degree, and what she's seeing, the mistakes that she's seeing that they make, and what makes a good resume, since that's what this chapter is really all about, and just interviewing and job seeking really overall. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about that today, and hopefully we'll also have a guest lecturer. So here we go. This chapter obviously titled Resumes, Interviews, and Negotiations. So it takes us from prior to an interview, creating a resume, and then obviously as we're trying to negotiate possibly and take a job. So we want to be able to set that up for success from the very beginning. It's something that we want to put a lot of time and energy. I talk in my crisis prevention class or crisis management class about putting a lot of time and energy at the forefront of the process, because it saves you a lot of time and energy and heartache later to kind of avoid maybe getting into a bad situation. So that's a little bit how I see this same interview job seeking process, which is you want to put some time and energy into it, especially in the beginning and at the beginning part of the process, because that will pay dividends to you later if you're actually going about this in the right way and researching and spending your time and energy with a little bit of research and just getting to know the process a little bit and the company and the job and all of those kinds of things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. Basically, your book starts out with the job seeking process. It talks about the exploring stage, and I wrote in my notes, you in all capital letters with several exclamation points, and knowing yourself. I think when I've had a lot of college students come in and seek advice about what they're going to do in their life and their careers and those kinds of things. And I think knowing yourself and what you are good at and what you enjoy and what you may not be as skilled at and what you do not enjoy doing, what you do not want to spend your time participating in, I think that is probably the biggest part of this process, is really just knowing yourself, honestly knowing yourself and getting feedback from other people. Sometimes we think, oh, I am going to go to medical school, or I think I would be a doctor, and your friends and other people could have insight into that and say, well, you remember in high school we dissected the frog and you threw up or something. So we want to be able to have feedback from the people in our lives that know us, but we also want to try to participate in the process a little bit and do some research so we are learning about what we need to do. So I want you to really think about, at the startup of this job seeking process, the explore stage is something you really want to spend your time and energy on. So your book talks about career exploration, research, and experience these types of things to the best of your ability. So you want to be able to look into these things, and if you can get an internship, or you can shadow someone, or you can follow someone around in some way, interview people. I've had students come and interview me about my job, and not just teaching, but other things that I've done, consulting, and I was in private practice for a long time, and I would have students come and talk to me about that, because there are some true things that you might want to avoid in some of these careers. When I was in private practice for a long time, I got out of private practice because there were things about that job that I didn't like. I think part of that was I was just kind of done with that chapter of my life, but also there were some real negatives about it that I just kind of got worn out with. So I want you to really talk to people and explore any kind of job possibilities that you have, because you really want to get to know yourself and get to know what you're going to like or not like in any kind of job situation. If you can, I mean, I've written here in your book talks about interviewing people that are in that profession and getting to know the pros and cons. Don't just ask them what they love about it, ask them what they don't like about it, because those things may be very relevant to you personally. If you can shadow someone, I don't care if that's a week, if that you spend your spring break following someone around for no money, that really shadowing someone that's doing your profession, it might be that just that 1 week, you might think, oh, I would never want to do that. I would never want to deal with all the problems that we had to deal with or whatever. So I think it's really important for you guys to look at those kinds of things as we're talking about exploring the job opportunities. If you can find an internship to do something, I know at UTD we offer different types of internships in different areas, but if you could get an internship, a paid or unpaid, most unpaid internship, if you could do that on a summer over a Christmas vacation, if there's some way that you could take a class and have a semester of being an intern somewhere, that is time and money well spent, because you're really going to get the best feedback for yourself if you are actively participating in that process. So I want you to just explore that if you can. The other part of that could be that you're just volunteering. It might be that you go down to a hospital and you're volunteering. You're at a lower level, you're not at a paid position, but if you can be in that environment and see what you like and don't like, I think that that's a great part of the research and exploring process for anyone that's seeking a job. Okay, so your book goes on to talk about all of that. And then this all kind of feeds into the researching stage. So what works in your career? So when I'm talking about researching, I'm talking about, well, now that I sort of know what I want to go into, I've explored, I know what I want to go into. Now I want to be able to research what is the best way for me to get into that career. What are the online resources that I have for that career? Who do I know that might be in that career? So we've got to be able to sort of funnel our energies into more specifically what this career that I think I've chosen, what I need to do to better get involved into that. So what are the online resources? What are the career planning centers that I might have either on campus or access to in other ways? Job fairs. I wrote want ads or classifieds. I wrote LOL after that because I don't know how much of that really still exists. I think there's a small amount of that, but I don't know that people are really actively, very small percentage I would say, are finding jobs and full-time positions in classifieds or want ads like in the olden days when I was looking for a job. Word of mouth, you want to be asking people that might be in your field or know people that are in your chosen field. What is it, what have you heard? Do you have any job openings? Do you want to post it on your Facebook? I know some of you younger people don't even do Facebook, but you want to be able to post, I'm looking for this kind of position. Does anybody have any contacts that I might be able to make, and be able to sort of explore the word of mouth thing, just the people that you might know that you could explore and ask about where you might be able to get that kind of a job. And then obviously there are employment services, for-profit I'll call it, or even governmental agencies that you can turn to that assist people in finding jobs. I think that depends on what type of job you are seeking and where. There are headhunters and people, I know that's kind of a slang term, I suppose, but there are headhunters of people and recruiting organizations that are geared very specifically for just certain jobs. There are legal, headhunter firms. There are doctors, firms that are just seeking doctors for employment. So you want to be able to sort of tailor your job search related to your career specifically, okay? Again, professional agencies. The other thing I would suggest is asking professors in your field. My first job after my master's degree came from a connection that my professor gave me. And so that was someone that I just went in and asked, hey, do you know anyone in Dallas? This is what I'm going to do. And I got great feedback, and it was a great start for me. So it was great. So you need to just think about where are all the areas and avenues that you can try to cover in regards to researching your career in your field specifically. And then you want to apply for the job. So this is the applying stage. You want to create a resume, and resumes, your book talks about, are generic or customized. There are types based on your field. I think that this is sort of more field specific. So I'm not going to get too specific with this, but I think there are different fields require different types of resumes. So that's something you really want to get some assistance with, whether that's the Career Placement Center or something like that you are designing the proper resume. I know now I've had different jobs and have done different things, but in the academic world, we have what is called a CV, not a resume. So if I was going to apply for an academic position, I'm going to send them my CV. If I am doing some consulting for a company, I also have a resume that I'm going to send them, a more traditional resume. So you want to be able to think about what is traditional in your field, and you want to sort of align yourself with that type of resume. And I hope that the guest speaker that I hope to have will go into a little bit more on the resume kinds of things. But the resume types that your book goes into: chronological, listing things that you've done in order; functional, which is skill-based, putting your skills kind of in order or categories; combination, which is a combination of chronological and functional. And so you want to be able, again, to apply your resume into what fits you and what fits your field that you are searching for a job for. You want to have your resume kind of create that in the norm. So you're going to want to Google and use all of your academic and career resources that you can to be able to set up a resume that works best for you in your field and with your skills and your education, all those kinds of things. Then on the contact information, obviously on your resume, you want to have a name, address, phone number, and an email. Now, if you have an email called, gosh, I could get creative here, but I can't think of anything that's not really stupid sounding, but Big Racer Girl. Okay, let's say I like NASCAR, and I want to put my email as Big Racer Girl. I don't know that that is the email address that I want to put on my resume. I have done resume screens for employment agencies and kind of consulted with people regarding finding the right personnel. And if I see a resume that has bigracergirl@gmail.com, I'm going to toss it out of the pile probably. It's just not very professional. And if I'm in a field where I'm looking for someone that's professional, I'm probably going to toss that out. So you want to create an email that is representative of your name and proper contact information to the best of your ability. Okay? You want to put on your resume your objective and a summary. It's 1 or 2 sentences statement about your goals. The summary is a final summary of your skills and experience. So you want to be able to sort of set that off to where people can actually see that. Because I think sometimes, and again, I've done some resume work, when you're going through resumes, it gets a little bit tedious. And so to read bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, that's great. Make some of those things that are really important to you and that you think are significant bold and set them off in some way. But if you can give an objective or a summary or both on a resume, I think that that really helps people pretty quickly to determine if you might be a good fit. But if you're going to do that, you want to make it a good summary and you want to make it a good objective. You want to make it something that's very relevant to you. You don't want to put an objective on something, make it sound like you want one thing when you really want something else. Because then again, you go back to the sort of, I'll use sort of from crisis management, kind of a pre-crisis situation. If I'm not being upfront with my communications about what I'm actively seeking and what I'm good at, then I'm going to have a crisis at some point because the job is not going to work out for me. So I want an honest summary and objective of what I'm looking for and what my skills are so that I can actually have a good fit and a good match with and trying to find some kind of position. You want to put your education obviously on your resume. Your most recent is up top with your major and your minor if we're talking about coming out of college. And if you're graduating, you want to be able to put on there anticipated graduating May 2014 or something. So they see that you are going to graduate and that's anticipated and when. I don't know that you would put that on your resume if you're graduating in 2020 or something. So you want to be able to make that very relevant if you're going to put anticipated date of graduation. Then your experience, you don't want to list every single thing you've ever done, especially if it's not very relevant. You really want your experience to line up somehow with what you're going to do, what the position is that you're seeking. Now, by that, I don't mean create false information, but you want to highlight the things that you did, your work experience that relates to the job and the position that you're seeking. So if you are trying to be a bank teller, but you worked as a cook somewhere, I don't know that that's very relevant. Now, maybe you moved up while you were a cook. Maybe you started out as a cook. Well, you would want to show that you had moved up from a cook to the head cashier or something. You want to be able to show some progress and things that are relevant on your resume. If you have something that was 2 weeks, you did something, unless it's just some spectacular thing, I don't know that you want to put that on your resume. Again, unless it's really relevant. And if you did a 2-week internship for someone and it's really relevant to the position, then put that. But you don't want to get bogged down in too many details. If you had a summer job every summer and they're all very different and all of that, I don't know that you want to get really bogged down in all of that. But you want your information to be relevant, your employment experience and your job experience to be relevant. Same thing with the skills. You want to put your skills, your relevant skills. If you are really good at knitting, I don't know that that's relevant unless you're trying to become the head knitter somewhere. I don't know that. Now, sometimes people put hobbies. I don't know that I would do that in this day and age, but that might be something that could come out in an interview, but I don't know if on a resume I would put that I like to knit and read. I don't know that that's very relevant. Again, a resume, we're trying to keep it relatively short, hit the highlights, and I don't know that some of those things are really relevant. So skills, obviously employment experience, awards, and hobbies. If there's something that you got an award or you have some hobby that's somehow related to the job that you're seeking, then I think that obviously can be very relevant. So you would want to put that if you could. And then most resumes, and I hope that my consultant's going to come in and do a lecture. I think most people don't put references unless the job specifically asks, please list your references. Most people don't do that. That's kind of something that happens later on in the job interview stage as we're getting on further down. And then in your resume, customizing that, you want to know your audience, visual appeal. You do not want to put your resume, I'm sure this goes without saying, you do not want to put your resume on purple scented paper because you love purple scented paper. That is not what we are shooting for unless you're trying to work for a perfume factory. So we're trying to customize our resume that fits us, and we want to know our audience who's reading their resume. Is it for a creative position? Do I want to show some ingenuity and some creativity on my resume, or do I not? So again, it's hard for me to have a hard, fast rule on that, but you want to make your resume related to the job and tailor that to your audience. If you're going to have the vice president of HR look at your resume, we certainly do not want a purple scented polka dot resume, even though it would be super cute. I don't know that that's what we're shooting for, okay? So, but again, we do want to customize it to the best of our ability, and we want it to stick out a little bit, but there are probably some subtle ways that you can make your resume stick out besides what I've already said. And then sometimes we have to really be cognizant of the fact that we're going to scan our resume. Sometimes we are, cutting and pasting things and applying to a position online. So we want to make sure that those things are going to translate well if we're going to be in some kind of electronic online application process. So that's something that you might want to do. Okay, and then there is something that I was going to point out here in your book. This is figure 4.1. Okay, so this is figure 4.1. You have your resume action words, and I think that this is, I guess I'll hold it up for you. Figure 4.1 action words for your resume. And just achieved, analyzed, calculated, conducted, delivered, distributed, explained, handled, implemented, obtained, participated, presented, updated, recommended, recruited. These are all action words that we want to be able to use on the resume. You do not want to say, I worked at starting programs. I worked at keeping costs down. I worked at, you don't want to use the same word over and over. So it's almost like using a thesaurus and trying to write well. You want to use some of these action words. And I think that these action words, when you write your resume out, do it the way you think that you need to do it, but then you want to be able to, you know, edit it. And when you're going, I think that is when it's a good time to use some of these action words. Go in and figure out when can you throw in some words so we're not using just the same words over and over again. Okay, and then a cover letter obviously accompanies your resume. It introduces you. I would shoot to get something really great and important in that first paragraph, because if someone is really doing a true resume screen, they're going through a lot of cover letters and a lot of resumes. So you want to be able to catch someone's attention, do some kind of thing right up front that is calling attention to your education skills, whatever you think is relevant the most, and tie it to that job specifically, and be able to write a good cover letter, because sometimes if you don't write a good cover letter, people aren't even going to get to your resume. So I want you to be able to kind of think about that. And then I want you also to there are examples in your book, so you can look at those examples in the book. And then when you go to the interviewing stage, obviously we want to really be able to think about that and what's professional and what's appropriate as you are interviewing. The way I'm dressed today, I'm in kind of a little sundress and the same white jacket I always wear. And that's not something that you would want to do for an interview. You would want to, obviously, unless you're, applying for a position where that might be appropriate, and still, I don't know that I would even do it then. I think that first impression, even if I was going to be, a checker at a grocery store, I think I would dress really nice to go in for an interview. So it just sets the tone. It shows that you're responsible, that you've really thought about this, that you care. And just because you're going to be a checker at a grocery store, it doesn't mean that you go in and wear blue jeans and a t-shirt, because maybe that's the uniform. Maybe they give you a t-shirt and you wear blue jeans every single time you're a checker, and that's the uniform at that store. But you want to show in your interview that you care, that you're responsible, and that you have some emotional intelligence, and that you're serious about the position, because they're going to pick you looking nice and professional over someone that's in blue jeans and a t-shirt, I think, unless your skills are just completely not comparable. Okay, and then so the interviewing stage, you want to be able to prepare your message and anticipate questions and script answers. I think that is much harder than your book makes it out to sound. I think scripting answers is something that's difficult, and if you aren't good at that, it can come across as very fake and like you're lying almost. So if I have scripted some answers of some things I want to highlight about myself, and you say, well, tell me about a work situation that you've been in previously that was difficult for you. And I say, well, I've got a lot of skills and I'm a really good people person. And, if I'm trying to throw my script into the question, it's going to come across as I can't follow, I'm not tracking what they're saying, I'm not giving them what they're asking me for. It's just not going to come across well. So I think you can get some, I would say 3 main points that you'd like to get across to your interviewer. And if you can slip those into the answer of a question, I would do that. But if it's something that you summarize with just at the end with, I want to thank you all for having me today, and just thank you for interviewing me. I really appreciate your time. And just as we leave, I just wanted to, highlight, I really have had a lot of experience in this area, and I've had a great work commitment in the past. My last job, I was there 7 years. You want to be able to throw out some of those things, even if you have to do that in a summary. So I just don't want, I think the scripted answers gets a little bit tricky, and I want you to really be able to focus. We've already talked about listening. That was our last chapter. So when you're in an interview, you want to be able to really listen. You want to be able to let go of the distractions, let go of your anxiety, and be able to really focus on what someone is saying. Because if you can track what they're saying and you can respond intelligently, you have a much better chance than someone else in getting the job. So you really want to be able to listen and ask questions. Again, we just talked about, I feel like I just recorded my listening lecture for you guys, but you want to be able to paraphrase what someone says to you. So if you're trying to facilitate a conversation, or if you don't understand a question that someone asks you, you can use some of those listening skills that I mentioned in the last chapter to be able to have a good interview. I don't know that listening was really brought up in this chapter, but I think that's an important part of communicating, obviously. And then in the interview process, you want to be a good listener. If you're over talking your interviewer, if you're jumping to answer them before they've gotten out all of their question, then you're not listening, and that's not going to come across very well to your interviewer. But you do want to prepare. You want to prepare what are the three main things I'd like someone to know if they're going to interview me. I want to anticipate some of the questions, so you can probably anticipate some. There's going to be a question something that was difficult for you and something that you did well. Those are, what are your flaws? What are your weaknesses? What are you really good at? You're going to get some of those. So you want to be able to think about those, but we'll get really hung up if you just sort of practice those type of answers and then someone throws something at you completely off and you're, we need to be prepared that they're going to ask me something that I'm not prepared for or that I just hadn't thought about. I don't even know that I want to say it, that I'm not prepared, but that I just hadn't considered. I was interviewing with a company recently about just getting hired on to do some consulting for them, and they asked me a question that was really thought-provoking, and I had no idea what I wanted to say. And it was a great question. I wasn't being fake about it, but I said, gosh, that is a great question. Let me think about that for a second. And I really kind of sat and thought about it for a minute. I didn't leave this long pregnant pause or anything, but it was a pause, certainly. But I wanted to authentically answer the question because it really was a good question. So I just want you to think about being yourself in your interview and listening and being able to actually answer the questions. Scripted answers are fine. Having a little bit, 3 little bullet points that you want to get out to someone, but I think you really need to be focusing on being yourself and listening and coming across well to the people that are interviewing. And then your book talks about connecting your answer to this company. I think if you can do that well and not come across too cheesy, I think that you definitely could do that. If you know a little bit about that company, for example, let's say you're interviewing at Parkland Hospital and they asked you a question about your skills or something, then you could say, well, I know here at Parkland, I looked at what the mission statement is, and your mission statement is blah, blah, blah. Well, a lot of my work experience has been very aligned with that same mission statement. So you can relate it back to the entity or the organization that you're interviewing with, but you don't want to say, well, I know at Parkland, the excellence, whatever. You don't want to be fakey with that. I doubt that's a word, but you want to be able to tie that in and be realistic with what you're saying. And you don't want to do it every question. So every question that they ask you, you don't want to say, well, I know here at Parkland, you don't want to do that. If you can throw it in, that's great, but you don't want to come across as you are being scripted. And if you end up throwing in the name there every single time, it's going to come across as a little bit fake. So, okay. And then practicing mock interviews. Sometimes people think that this is really silly, but I think that is very valuable to sit across from someone and have them ask you questions that it could be just in a generic interview. It could be about anything. But practice that. Practice thinking on your feet. Maybe you don't know the questions that your friend or your mom or your dad or someone's going to ask you. And let them think up 5 questions and be able to think on your feet and see how it's going to be when you don't know what the question was that someone asked you and you needed to sit and think about it for a minute. Do you sit there and say, and, rub your hair and stuff? No, you want to just sit and think, well, that's a great question. I think sometimes my skills have been in the area of whatever. You can kind of talk and think at the same time. So that's kind of what we're trying to do here. But you can do that with practice and having some mock interviews. And especially if you haven't interviewed a lot in your life, that can be a great skill for you to do and just to be able to practice. I think it really can be very handy. You realize that you say a lot, which I'm personally am working on. Or you can see some of your flaws. Did you start to fidget? Or what was the feedback from the person that was interviewing? The feedback might have been, I thought you didn't know what you were going to say, or you seemed like you were lying, or whatever the feedback might be from someone that you trust. Then you can work on that a little bit. And that can be something that you work on, obviously, prior to an interview that might be really important to you. Telephonic interviews, that's sort of what we're doing here today and what we've been doing, the e-interviews. So we want to be able to have interviews on the phone or have interviews via Skype or other mechanisms that we want to be comfortable with that. So it's not just so much that I'm comfortable sitting down with someone face to face, but I might sound a little stiff on the phone. We want to be able to come across as ourselves, whether we're on the phone or we are in person. We want to be able to sound smart, be on top of our answers to the best of our ability. Obviously, appearance, I think, is a big factor if you're going into an interview. I already mentioned that. What are you going to wear? What's appropriate? Grooming yourself. Don't go in having not shaved for 3 days. That's probably not what we would do. You want to reduce your anxiety to the best of your ability and be at your best. Set your interview, your day up for success. So do you want to go to bed early the night before? Of course you do. Do you want to know where you're going ahead of time? Of course you do. Do you want to know if you have to pay to park? Of course you do. You don't want to be flustered and in an absolute panic when you get to your interview. You want to know who you're meeting, what floor are they on, what suite are they in, what's the map. I mean, now you can go to Google Maps and pull up the street view of a business, and you can see that's where I'm going to park. That's where I'm going to go. It says it's on the 3rd floor. So, and obviously you want to get there early. So you want to get there early so you're not sweating and sliding into the seat at, straight up 3 o'clock for your interview. You want to be able to be appropriate in your appearance, in your grooming, obviously, and reduce your anxiety. Here's another thing. Your book uses this, the keys thing about, the K being know yourself. You want to know yourself on this. What for you personally puts you more at ease? Is it that you needed to get up and work out that morning? That's what it would be for me. When I go and do something that I might be anxious about, when I'm going to go speak to a group of people, 300 people, I'm going to be up on a stage and doing a presentation, I'm going to have to work out that morning because that will reduce my anxiety and my stress and put me a little bit more at ease. Is it that I need to, it might be for some people that they woke up in time to sit and have their coffee and take care of the things that they need to take care of in the morning. So you've got to be able to think about what for you makes you feel hectic and out of sorts, and what for you makes you feel relaxed and calm and I've got this, because you want whatever it is that makes you feel like I got this. Okay, that's what we're shooting for. Again, we're trying to set it up for success during your interview. Okay, you want to be early. This is the first note I've made. Early exclamation point is what I've written down. You want to shake hands appropriately, okay? I recently had a consulting meeting with a man that shook my hand to the point of pain. Okay, I don't know what the situation was with this person that he felt the need to power up on me. Some of you don't know, I'm 5'1" and don't come across very menacing, I don't think. But for whatever reason, this guy was running around shaking everybody's hands, or maybe it was just mine, and this crushing handshake. You don't want to have the limp handshake. Every now and then, I get offended when men take my hand like in the old days and hold my hand like this. I'm like, what the heck is that? Give me a handshake. So it's nothing that we're going to try to power up with people, but I think it shows people that you're confident, that you aren't scared to interact with people, that you're present, that you're aware. So I think a good handshake is the way to do it. So I want to just kind of put that in there. You want to be friendly everywhere. You want to be nice to the parking attendant. You want to be nice to the person on the elevator. You want to be nice in the bathroom if you run into someone in the bathroom. So you don't want to be so anxietied out that you're rude to the person on the elevator and it comes up that it's going to be one of the people sitting on your panel. Okay, so we want to be friendly everywhere we go in the job interview situation. We want to pay attention to our verbal and nonverbal cues. Again, so we're paying attention to what we're saying, but we're also paying attention to our nonverbals. Am I working my earring? Am I playing with my earring the whole entire time they're asking me questions? Am I wringing my hands? Am I taking my ring off and on? You want to be able to pay attention to how you come across with your verbals and nonverbals. Are you not looking people in the eye? Are you looking like you're lying? What is the feedback? Is your voice so low, your voice tone so low that you come across not very confident? Are you slumping, or are you sitting up straight, being able to have a conversation? You want to think about all of the verbals and nonverbals that go into the interview job seeking process, okay? So Obviously, we've already talked about verbals and nonverbals, but all of those come into play when we are talking about interviewing and applying for a job. There are illegal questions, obviously, and I won't go into all of those, but I don't think you're allowed to ask someone if they're married, and there's some other sort of HR questions that you're steer clear of in the interview process. I think that there's some balance to that. I've had people come out and say, well, they asked me if I was married. Well, sometimes you might hit it off with an interviewer, and in conversation, I've had great interviews before where people just begin to talk, say, oh, I have a son. How old's your son? So you can just end up tiptoeing into areas that are kind of legally off limits. Just veer yourself right back out of that. I think there are people that ask illegal questions, whether that is to discriminate on various different things. So those are to be cautioned about, for us to be aware of, but not every question that leans over to that area is necessarily illegal. So I think sometimes you have to really judge, is this just, we sort of got lost in conversation, ended up talking that we were both married, or ended up talking about we both had children or something, or that I went to church over the weekend, or is it something that might be a little bit more menacing than that? So I think that every situation is different. We have to kind of judge those and be balanced about those things as we move forward. Following up, I know that this recruiter that I've asked to speak to you guys, I don't know if she'll address that specifically, but follow up. If you do an interview with someone, write a handwritten note. I mean, I would suggest that you write a handwritten note to that person. You know their name usually, and you can even send an email. I've even had to do that. I know I interviewed with these 3 people, and I wanted to send them a thank you note, but I know the main person that I'd communicated with prior to the interview, but I don't know the last names of the other 2 people that met with me, and they took me around and took me on a tour. I want to be able to thank those people, because if they're out on an interview with me, then they're not at their desks getting their work done. So I want to be able to follow up with a thank you note. Thank you for meeting with me. I appreciated your time. I enjoyed the conversation. I would love to consider what I could do for Parkland Hospital in the future. I think my skills line up very well with your mission statement. Something like that. It doesn't have to be that it's all about the job. You're thanking these people personally. You may never see these people again. You may not get the job, but you certainly don't want to burn any bridges. The other part of that is, it may be that you don't get this job, that you weren't right for that position, but a nice thank you note after that could lead them to consider you for the next job when they have an opening that you might be more in line with. So they're going to think, I know that Lynn lady wrote me that nice thank you note. I'm going to, pull up that email address or look for her resume, and I'm going to contact her about this new position that we have, because I think she'd be a good fit for that. So you really want to be able to follow up with people, at minimum an email that you can do for somebody to just thank them for their time. I enjoyed meeting with you. I hope that you'll consider me for their position or whatever. So you really want to be able to follow up with people. I think that that's very, very important. And then your book talks about negotiation. I am not necessarily a skilled negotiator. I'm at a stage in my life where, certainly for me personally, it'll work for me or it won't. I can do it or I can't. It's not even necessarily all about the money. Time is money. I'm not going to do something that isn't worth my time, but there might be something that has nothing to do with money, that it's a project that I just want to be involved in or I'm passionate about. So you want to be able to negotiate and stick up for yourself, and that's where I think you do go to other resources and try to figure out what is the proper salary, what are the benefits that I need to be looking for. You need to be able to negotiate some of that stuff and stick up for yourself, but don't get short-sighted just on money. If this is a job that you would do, that you love, that you think you will enjoy, and they're offering you $10,000 less than what you wanted, unless you just think you are being persecuted, I would try to get my foot in the door if it was a job I really thought I wanted. So don't just get blinded by the money. And your book talks about in negotiation, you want to be polite. You want to think about it. You don't want to just say, sure, yes, I'll take it right now. Or no, I won't. You want to be able to think about it and do a little bit of research, do some homework on if you get a job offer, and be able to consider a lot of different factors. Seek advice. It's the whole package. Don't be so money focused that you're losing sight of there's great growth potential for you. There's great leadership potential for you. That it's a younger company, that you're able to move up pretty quickly. So you want to really be able to take all of these things into account, and you can't really take those into account just with a knee-jerk reaction. So you want to be able to do your research, do your homework, negotiate well for yourself, but negotiate intelligently for yourself with knowing that it's a whole package deal. It's not just the money, and it's not just the benefits. It's a whole package. Maybe it's 10 minutes from your house. It's less money, but it's 10 minutes from your house. You can go home at lunch and let your dog out. Whatever the things are that are important to you, you need to consider the whole package, okay? But you do want to consider negotiation. I think that the recruiter, I don't know if she'll address negotiation, but I know that she would tell you, negotiate. If there's something that you need, that you want, don't just say no. Negotiate. They can say no, and you can maybe still take the job. But you want to be able to negotiate for yourself and lay the groundwork that I will negotiate for myself. I think that's just a good bar to set from the very beginning. Okay, so that is my rendition of your chapter 4. I hope that you guys are all doing well. I know there was some confusion last week on the assignment. My apologies on that. I think I didn't explain it very well. It's a thing that I had not done in the past, and so I think people were kind of freaking out about it some, and I kind of pulled the plug on the second part of the assignment, so I apologize if that threw anybody off, but we might explore that in the future. But for right now, I'm just trying to keep things simple. Also, I am behind on my grading. I'm catching up today, but I'm behind on my grading. So for those of you that have emailed me and said, oh my goodness, I need some feedback, my apologies to you, and I am not going to offer up any beautiful excuses. I'm trying to catch up, and I will do that. As far as I know, other than people turning in things late or not turning them in at all, everyone is pretty much doing fine. So I will tell you where the grades have discrepancies are when people write 3 sentences versus 2 pages. So if I'm asking you for a paper or for an essay type response, 3 sentences is not going to cut it. It's not about the length, but it is about the depth of the question and your answer and the time that you took to address the issues that I'm asking you about, okay, or the concepts that I'm asking you about. So that is my only feedback. I hope you all are doing well. Please remember, I am here, email, phone, however you want to contact me. Some of you have emailed me and I have not answered immediately, but it's because I didn't know the answer. Some of you have said, how do you want me to do this assignment? And I thought, well, that's a great question. My perception of it was that it would be just one way, but maybe there's another way. So I wanted to investigate that before I answered the question. So I hope you guys are enjoying your time and are in our class. And I will see you probably in just a few minutes. I'm going to record your Chapter 5 lecture, so I'll be in the same outfit. So not what I would recommend for an interview. Don't wear the same outfit twice. But I will be in the same outfit for Chapter 5. So again, if you need anything, let me know, and I will see you guys soon. Thank you.